Hey there and welcome to Tour Confidential. I'm Ryan Aselta and I'm happy to be joined this week by Golf.com's Dylan DeChair. And joining us via Skype from Arizona is Golf.com's Jessica Marksberry. And guys, we're going to talk a little politics today. Not really, though. Jordan Spieth wins the election for chairman of the Players Advisory Council on the PGA Tour, beating out Billy Hurley and going against that smear campaign that Billy Hurley put against him, Dylan. But Spieth is the man who will have the ear of Commissioner Jay Monahan on the Players Advisory Council. When you look at Spieth, obviously a high-profile name to talk with Jay Monahan in these meetings, what is the first order of business Spieth needs to address with the commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, there's some hot-button topics that have been coming through. I mean, you look at just this week, Thursday, nothing abnormal happening, and the pace of play was so slow at the Genesis Open that the last few holes were delayed due to darkness. So pace of play, certainly something that's tempting. But for me, I really want the end of the season. I really want it to finish with a bang. I want the Tour Championship. I want some sort of crazy Monday finish. Maybe it's a playoff. Maybe it's the top 4, top 6, top 8 guys playing in some kind of shootout so that $10 million prize really means something.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to adjust the schedule of the FedEx Cup playoffs, Jess. That should end before football season. But I think Dylan's alluding to maybe a format change, a points change, where we're seeing more, head-to-head, mano-a-mano down the stretch. What do you think? Is there something that should be number one on Chairman Spieth's list to talk about with Jay Monahan?
I love Dylan's suggestions. Something that came to mind first and foremost for me was a bit more mundane. Just having the Waste Management Phoenix Open so close in the rearview mirror at this point. They did something kind of cool on the Wednesday where the Pro-Am was just 9 holes for each of the pros. So each of the Pro-Am groups got to play with 2 different pros. The fans got to see double the number of tour players out on the course that they would normally see on a Wednesday. And it seemed like a win-win for everybody. I don't know if it was just a test scenario that they were seeing, how people would react and if the players liked it. I think it was a huge hit, and I think it should be something on the agenda going forward that they consider doing maybe in every event. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, the Tour pros love that. Only committing to 9 holes with the amateurs. Plus, if you're an am, you get to play with 2 different pros, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad neither one of you went heavy on slow play. Dylan mentioned it, but I'm sorry. I think the slow play is overrated. There are the J.B. Holmes of the world, but all in all, the pace of play is the same as it's been the last 20 years. Jess, I think he's got to address the transparency issue with Commissioner Monahan with when it comes to penalties handing down for suspensions, drug use, cheating, where we never hear what the suspensions are for. We just see players like we saw with Dustin Johnson go on a leave of absence. And I don't think that's fair to the rest of the players on tour, especially when it comes to social media. It leads to speculation. It leads to more questions. People questioned why Dustin Johnson withdrew from the Masters this past year, even though his team all said it was because of a fall. A lot of speculation, and that's because of a lack of transparency. What do you think, Jess? Should that be addressed at some point with the tour?
Yeah, certainly. And you know what, Ryan? I do think the veil is lifting a little bit because we are seeing those performance-enhancing drugs, positive tests being made public pretty much right away. So I think we are moving in the right direction there. But, the PGA Tour is famously very protective of their product. They want to show these guys in the best possible light. But, on Tour Confidential, and I think throughout lots of media outlets, we've been calling for that kind of transparency for a long time. I think we're getting closer, though, Ryan. I think we will see it happen in the near future.
Yeah, and it's the PEDs are the one that they announce they're transparent about. But you would think as a clean Tour pro, a guy who hasn't used drugs, cheated, you would want those names out there for the guys that do, wouldn't you, Dylan?
Definitely. I think you want any sort of veil of suspicion to be lifted off of yourself because, if everything's a secret, then anyone can have doubt cast on their record. One good place to start, though, release those election results. I want to see how close Billy Hurley was to catching Jordan Spieth after that campaign video.
Yeah, he made a big run after that campaign video, no doubt. Let's talk about the Florida Swing, guys, which starts coming up this week down at the Honda in West Palm Beach. And the Florida Swing also includes, of course, a trip to Mexico now. And Jess, let's start with that, the WGC event in Mexico with a couple big names not attending this year. Jason Day will not be there. Rory McIlroy. Jordan Spieth has hinted that he doesn't know if he's going to go to Mexico. Is this a problem with the tour? Obviously, this takes the place a year or two ago of the event at Trump Doral in Miami. Instead, they go to Mexico. They're losing big names. Is there a problem with where this falls on the schedule and obviously the location? This is a long trip for the guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always hard, I think, for these guys to go from one side of the country to the other. But we've seen them go from one side of the world to the other, right, when maybe the money is right and the timing kind of falls into place. So this is a little curious. The only thing I can think of is the fact that, you know what, after next week, guys, the Masters is only 5 weeks away. It's crazy to think that we're getting that close, but especially when you're a top 10 player in the world, even a top 20 player in the world, scheduling becomes so crucial. Resting at the right time, making sure that you're ramping up to peak at the right time in tournament play. And so I think that's on a lot of these guys' minds when they're looking at the schedule of the next, 4 or 5, even 6 weeks out. They want to make sure that they're in prime shape for the Masters, and they have to take a week off sometimes. It used to be the World Golf Championships were a slam dunk to get the best names in the game, but certainly considering the cross-country flight that's now required to go to Mexico, I'm not that surprised that a couple of the big names are bailing out.
Yeah, what do you think, Dylan? Is this more about a where it falls on the schedule? I mean, the Masters, like Jess said, really a month away at this point. Do they need to reevaluate where the Mexico event falls on the calendar?
I think they probably do, and I'm really of split minds about this because, so much of me says that this is just the tour pros being so soft. I mean, it's about a 3-hour flight from Miami to Mexico City. From Dallas to Mexico City is like 2.5 at the most. But the money isn't enough to entice these guys. You really have to hold their hand sometimes to really just say, all right, it's going to be this easy to get to this tournament, to make it make sense for your schedule. And I do really think it's a good thing for the tour to be trying to expand to Mexico City. And I think the event went off pretty well last year. So I think a schedule change to maybe put it in line with some of the Texas events might make it make a little bit more sense and get it further away from Augusta.
I think where it falls, hey, it's the Florida swing, Jess. The second leg should be in Miami. And Jay Monahan has said they want to go back to Miami at some point. Eric Trump told us on Golf Live that he guarantees that the PGA Tour will come back to Miami. Now, whether that's Doral or not remains to be seen. But the Florida swing number 2 of the Florida swing, they should go back to Miami at some point, shouldn't they?
Certainly, it's obviously an awesome golf market. There was always a lot of hype around Doral. People loved going there. It was a big time event, and I think a lot of us were sad to see it go. The Blue Monster, right? We want to see the guys take it on, especially these days when there's all these complaints, right, about the ball going too far, the game is looking a little bit too easy. Well, never seems to look that easy when they're at Doral, right?
Yeah, you're right. It does come down to sponsors, though. They didn't have a sponsor to keep it there. When they get a new sponsor, I'm sure it could come back to Miami, and it just makes so much sense to be in that market, Jess. We'll see if they can get back to Miami. They're in the second year of a multi-year deal with Mexico, of course. All right, Dylan, Jess, thanks so much for being with us this week, and thanks to you guys for joining us on Tour Confidential. Of course, you can catch us right here on Golf.com next week.